What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Hello, Buffer Timers. Welcome to the support group that happens to come together once a week and talk about Star Trek. Today, we have a brief show about the animated series episode Yesteryear. But before we get into that, we're going to have a little discussion about what we know about Strange New Worlds so far, try to guess what some of the episodes are going to be about, and talk about the much maligned photo leak that we've seen in the past week. So we'll start by going around and introducing ourselves clockwise. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
My name is Scott. I'm host of the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About.
Howdy, Robbie Sherman here from Conversations with Robbie Sherman. Thank you for having me today, everybody.
Hi, I'm Vanessa, and I have a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
Hi, my name is Del, and I'm working on a YouTube project, but it's not done yet.
Can't wait to hear more about that in the future. But for now, what we know about Strange New Worlds is the episode order, and we're going to play a little game here and try to guess what we think the episode is going to be about, given the title. So let's go right down the list. What do we think the Broken Circle is going to be about?
They have to. Did they address the return of Una yet?
No.
What we know the trailers is that we're going to see a court-martial at some point in the season, so that one could very well be it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe she has to give out secrets about the Illurians, and that's the Broken Circle. Is now the secret is out to other people.
Yeah, I think that's going to be it. I think it has to be. We have to address that, and especially since we've seen her in so many trailers. Or so many pieces of the trailer, there's no way she's not in the bulk of the season.
Right.
They have to face that, like, augmented people on that planet didn't really choose that for themselves. And so they have to, grok with the ethics of, like, completely writing off an entire group of people because they happen to have that background.
Yeah. So the next episode is ad asper per aspera. I guess I'm not great at Latin. That translates to a rough road leads to the stars. Go ahead, Del.
I know what the last word. Oh no, the first one, the Astra, because that's my middle name.
Mm-hmm.
So it means star, kind of obviously, but yeah, that's my middle name.
So a rough road to the stars. I'm going to go with, I bet this is going to be like a pre-warp civilization that they come across, or that's like just getting into warp travel.
Yeah.
Something about the Prime Directive.
The next one is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow.
It's got to be time travel.
I think so.
That may just be like a really bloated Shakespearean type thing, too, with a title like that.
I can sleep on that idea. Mm-hmm.
I like this comment here. Bashir didn't choose for himself either. Maybe it's an Una directive that helped him remain in Starfleet. I don't think so, because the parents still had to go to jail. They had to be punished. That was the trade. So I think either that was Una was just, yeah, we kind of have to find out in the premiere. Did they just sweep her history under the rug? Did they, are they retconning augments to be, or this group of augments to be part of the Federation? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah, or it could be a time loop episode. Either way, there's going to be some time shenanigans, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, Among the Lotus Eaters.
Space hippies.
Yes! Oh my god, I love that.
That's going to be space hippies. You just wait and see.
Keep talking and looking something up.
I think this is some kind of Greek myth. Is that what you're looking up, Del? Because
yeah, I've heard the word lotus eater before.
Yeah, me too.
So the meaning, hold on, the meaning according to the dictionary. Oh, my dictionary just disappeared. Come back. Lotus eater. Keep talking.
Oh, remember that episode of TOS? Now I can't even. It was the last episode that I reviewed on my channel.
With Spock and the flower. Oh my god.
So
God, maybe we're gonna finally find out about that chick.
Yes, that's what I think it has to do with. Somebody commented on that video about how that story reminded them of this particular myth. So yeah.
So I have an update.
What Robbie said. It could be like, they're kind of a group of space hippies too. Go ahead, Del.
I have the definition or the history of where lotus eaters came from, because I knew that phrase. In Greek mythology, the lotus eaters were a race of people living on an island dominated by the lotus tree, a plant whose botanical identity is uncertain. The lotus fruits and flowers were the primary food of the island and were a narcotic, causing the inhabitants to sleep in peaceful apathy. I don't know if that helps, but I knew I recognized that term from somewhere.
It does, because that episode was about like people being drugged by a plant into having a sort of false sense of unity or whatever, like it anesthetizes them. And so it was like a space hippie thing. It was like, oh, is this like commentary on marijuana? Like everybody's just relaxed and not motivated or whatever. So yeah.
Gene Roddenberry, famous marijuana advocate.
How about charades? I'm going with one of those like weird kids plots, like at the time in TNG when we shrunk all the main cast into kids. That was fun.
The episode is This Side of Paradise. That was the one that was the name of it. Yeah.
Okay. It could also be Shakespearean nonsense. There's always a possibility.
It could be an episode in which, for some reason, the UT is down.
Oh.
Or sound doesn't travel, and so they have to communicate everything via hand gestures and dances.
I'd go with that for maybe the next one with Lost in Translation, which is definitely going to be an Uhura episode. That one.
See, I thought that was going to be a Sofia Coppola tribute. I'm way off base today. Never mind.
I was going to make the same joke, Robbie.
No, Miri, for the love of God, and no children, no leading, none of that.
Yes,
I'm with Norman.
Keep children out of this as long as possible, I say.
Yeah.
For the aging episode, I watched Miri and the children shall lead twice, and if I never watch them again, I'll be a happy camper.
Agreed.
So, I don't think there's any disagreement amongst us what Those Old Scientists is going to be about. That's going to be the crossover episode.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. So let's switch the question then to how's it going to happen? Is it a holodeck episode? Is it time travel? What kind of weird stuff we got going on?
I hope it's a Who Framed Roger Rabbit type of thing.
That would be cool.
I bet it's probably going to have something like the dimensions got crossed together and now we have to separate them somehow by making an explosion, and all the little Lower Decks cartoons are going to be hanging out, making quips.
Being witty, hanging out. I don't know about that though, because like, wouldn't that mean that Lower Decks is it considered canon, or is it just like not even a question?
That is a great question. I've heard both answers from semi-official sources. So
Yeah, I've been kind of wondering that stuff in my head too, because when I watch Lower Decks and then they have it interact with Deep Space Nine stuff so often, and you also have Riker kind of being a part of it, it makes me wonder like how much they're actually plotting it into the live action canons.
Well, when you look up stuff in Memory Alpha, if someone's been on Lower Decks, they add that to their story. So I don't know if that makes canon or not.
Oh. Okay.
I'm also thinking I did see a picture of Tawny Newsome wearing a red shirt with a communicator on it. I don't know if it was a promo picture, but maybe they show up in live action.
Okay, I'm okay with that too.
That's a good call.
I would really like to see Jack McQuaid do that Boimler voice in live action. That would be fun.
Mm-hmm. We're going to get it one way or another.
Yeah, I attached the characterization, like the character design, so closely to the characters themselves that like breaking that fourth wall by actually putting the actor who voices it would like bother me for some reason. I can't put my finger on why. It's just a stupid nerd thing.
I think it's going to be a holodeck episode, but as far as canon, I think if this isn't a dream sequence in the end, then it fully canonizes Lower Decks by putting it into a live action, I think.
Yeah.
So, under the cloak of war, one of the things we've seen in the trailer have been Klingons. And we already know that we can't really do much with Romulans because still by TOS with Kirk, they haven't actually met the Romulans. So I'm going with that's the Klingon episode.
Yeah, I can't really make a better guess myself.
Unless Badgie becomes live action and starts attacking the ship, that could be it too.
They first meet Core in TOS, right? Do they meet Klingons prior to that? Are they like a known group?
There is a Klingon in Enterprise, which happens.
Okay. Well, that answers that. Yep.
And Discovery, but who knows if they're the same Klingons?
At this point, because now they're going back to the old makeup.
Thank God. I hated the new makeup.
I don't care about the makeup. Just be consistent, for the love of God.
Look, we have to make sure Italian Americans are hired in this country, okay? They're a short-lived demographic.
And yet again, though, my only big problem with the changes in makeup is that both Discovery and now Strange New Worlds have had an out for their tough makeup. TOS did it. We can just give them big bushy eyebrows. It's fine.
Yeah, let's not go back to TOS Klingons, please.
I'm not really advocating for that, but I'm just saying they had an off-ramp. They had an easy out, and they didn't take it.
I really hope we don't go back to those types of fan-centric ideas about what makes things good. We don't need to keep going back to brown face for these characters or anything like that. It'd just be ridiculous.
How about Subspace Rhapsody?
I kind of want that to be.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I kind of want that to be the Uhura episode more than the other one. I feel like this has her name on it. But what we haven't found yet, and we know is coming, is an Ortega story.
Yes.
One of these has to be the Ortega story. So I don't know which one, but one of them is going to be her backstory. Their backstory.
The actress was a bit snarky in response to people not having a backstory for Ortegas, people making a big deal of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just didn't do that out of spite. But I see Subspace Rhapsody and I think Wayne's World tribute. If we have a Star Trek or Wayne's World tribute, I would be very happy.
Party time, excellent.
Holy crap. Keep talking.
I bet you anything Spock's going to have a big old loot solo in the middle of this one.
This is on my desk. So yeah.
So the last one, hegemony, could mean a couple of things. We know that there's a Gorn episode, and the Gorn is the Gorn hegemony as an entity. So we could be talking about them, or it could be something in the lines of the way the Federation adds worlds in basically hegemony. So
there is a tabletop game called Star Trek Hegemony, I believe, or that's where
Star Trek Ascendancy.
Yes,
which it's all you win it through hegemony. Yep.
Yes,
as the Federation.
So hegemony to me has very heavy implications of Federation type critique. I hope that that's what this is, because this generation of Trek shows is terrified of doing that, like terrified of criticizing the institution that is the Federation. It's just completely like, morally in the right, because like this moral universe is super simple. So to actually like criticize it, and the fact that it requires hegemony to a certain degree, even though it's it says they appreciate diversity. I would be interested to see like anything like any sort of comment on the state of things.
Rock on. Do we have any more thoughts about any of these episodes before we move on? All right. Well, I'm going to turn the mic over to Robbie, who's going to host us on some yesteryear. Whoops.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Robbie Sherman. We're going to be covering the Star Trek TAS episode Yesteryear, where while messing around in the Gate of Infinity, or whatever the hell it's called, I can never keep it in my head.
The Guardian of Forever.
The Guardian of Forever, yeah, with his big booming cartoon voice that I love.
Carl! I love Carl.
Yeah. Yeah, they end up changing the timeline, and Spock is no longer alive in this timeline, so Spock ends up going back in time to rescue his younger self from a Vulcan growing up ritual. Did you all have fun with this episode before we begin?
Well, it's definitely the best of TAS.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I felt validated about some of the stuff that I said in the music and Trek episode about like, yeah, the music is 70s and hokey, but it's also very evocative. And I think there's this one violin phrase that they repeat that has a very you can't predict the end note because it's something other than what you would ordinarily hear. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I don't think it's in like a 4/4. I think it's like in like a 7/8 or a 3/4 or something, and it jarringly cuts off and repeats. I wish Eve was here.
Totally. I really like all the wah-wah guitar that pops up unexpectedly. There will be like long passages, and then you'll have this note whenever there's an action scene, and you just have like a strong chord like being wah-wah. It's really striking and dynamic. It really helped move the plot along for me at times, because sometimes the designs are just so simple. There's not really much of interest to look at.
It was really a useful glimpse of like Spock's life growing up on Vulcan as a half human, and the kind of challenges that he faced with people just dismissing him and being discriminatory towards him, and how he coped with that. Like that like you see a lot of what Spock, like the beginning stages of him, because like he's constantly having to prove his Vulcanness, and that's why it's like so important to him to restate that every opportunity.
Yeah, if you just saw the like 2009 Star Trek movie where you see a little bit of Spock's backstory in the Kelvin universe, which is presumably at that point the same as regular universe Spock's upbringing, that you wouldn't get that like, oh wow, why are these Vulcan kids such assholes? Why would this happen like this? But like, no, this has been canon since the 70s.
Yeah, I can't hardly look at these children though with their little seat belts around them.
Oh my god, yeah, the outfits.
Yes. I wrote the question, why do Vulcan children wear 2 seatbelts and some underoos? Because that's all they're wearing. Is that part of like the school uniform? Here's your underoos, here's some seatbelts, figure it out.
It's to make their bodies callous against the tough Vulcan dirt.
I used to be like a somebody that would help my fellow classmates cross the street. Yeah. And we were given these like sashes to sort of like, you know, and they had different ranks and everything. So this is exactly what that reminded me of. Like you could be like a sergeant or a captain. And I just wondered like, why no shirts though? I guess because like the way they depict Vulcan's weather in it is really funny. Because like Spock comes in, he's wearing like a jacket, and these kids are like not wearing a lot. And it's like it's supposed to be super hot there, so what's the deal?
Yeah,
it's cold on the Enterprise to him, you know. He's walking around wondering why they don't turn the AC up.
Freaking green blood.
I really think it's funny how casual Spock is about going back in time when they realize what happened. Just like, I have to do this. It's never a thing like, I'm going to create a weird loop in time that if I'm not careful will destroy all of eternity, which I don't know how often those type of theories were being in practice during this time of sci-fi writing, but I'm sure there was probably at one point where they were investigating like alternate realities and coming to the conclusion that you could probably screw things up if you went back in time like that.
It's not so much.
On the Edge of Forever was all about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not get to watch that, unfortunately.
I thought it was interesting that they introduced an Andorian as Spock's replacement, because we know from Enterprise, and maybe from books, I don't know, that the Vulcans and the Andorians were long in war. And we saw that at Waitan in Enterprise. So it's almost like he's the exact opposite of Spock. And I think that was just interesting to use that race in particular.
Do you think him and McCoy get along better together? You know, like they're good buddies instead of the like snarky, biting relationship him and Spock have.
In general,
well, how you doing, fella?
You don't see very much of him, but he does seem similarly rigid to Spock in the short interaction that they have. So I would tune into that spinoff personally.
Yeah.
I bet they would call that "Damn it, Jim, I'm not." I can't even finish it. I'm so sorry.
I wondered, like at first, like could this be just like a really elaborate prank? Like let's totally pretend that nobody knows who Spock is, that he's like a dead guy, and get some Andorian to pretend to be the first officer, and just like carry on like that, and eventually he'll snap and go back in time thinking he needs to save himself. Like this is just a long game prank.
Or it could be that they set up the prank, we're just going to make it look like everyone forgot who he is, and Spock's response was, I need to go back in time, and everybody else was like, shite.
maybe that's why his pet didn't die, and he didn't remember his pet dying, because this was all a prank. How do y'all feel about these painted backdrops? They look pretty good at times, right?
I think the background is the best part of the show, honestly. The foreground stuff doesn't wow me in any way, shape, or form.
It was good when it was on the air. But now that we're looking at it after decades of developments in animation, I think it's hard to look back and say, well, that looks like crap now. But it was, because that was even before the sort of Japanese style, like Scooby-Doo kind of editing. It was before that stuff. I don't think it's the first show to use it, but I think it was early in its time for that sort of animation style.
I really enjoy like the landscapes of that time period of where there's this a few scenes where little Spock is running to the mountain and it's just his silhouette, like you don't really see, but you see these like craggy sort of peaks in the distance. I just thought that was really artful and well done.
Yeah, I noticed the silhouette work they were doing too to save money. When Ichaya like runs after Spock and he goes into the like mountains, he heads towards the mountains. All it is just a black silhouette because it's darkness and they don't have to animate the whole thing. And it's effective. I get it. They didn't have a lot of time. I would say the main problem I have with the animation is that the like bottom of the mouths don't move with the lips, and that creates this uncanny effect whenever they talk. It makes some passages just kind of drone on a little bit because you have so little action.
Yeah, the mouth movements.
Yeah, Bill.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah,
I want to change the subject. So if you have more to talk about that, then go ahead.
Oh no, it's okay. Please. Go ahead.
We forgot to point out that the Enterprise has a wardrobe department.
Yes. Why do they have a wardrobe section?
Welcome to life before replicators.
I just think it's funny that they aren't like a average corporation that just keeps them like costumes on the floor in the manager's department or something.
If you've got O'Brien standing around in a transporter room all day, just in case, I could see there being one lowly like tailor sitting in a room full of like different costumes from different eras. Like they'll be here sometime.
I wonder if like he was able to choose his own ship, like he's the fancy one that everybody likes, and he was able to choose his own ship, and he has just like all these displays of wardrobes from Starfleet past.
But yeah, I had a lot of fun with the idea of there being a wardrobe department, and it's like an old woman like Roz from Monsters Inc. And she's like, all right, where you going? Like, that was all in my head.
Our viewer, Norman, says it's a contemporary with Hanna-Barbera in the 70s.
Yeah.
Like, stuff with, like, wait till your father gets home. And that is true. It is a, like, contemporary in the sense... It's a contemporary in the sense that it's, like, adult skewered TV show in a way that other shows weren't at the time. And this episode in particular had some controversy with the people that ran CBS, and they didn't want to necessarily show it because of the euthanasia aspect, but because Roddenberry held everything, like as far as rights go, they basically had to put it on no matter what their objections were. So that's a pretty cool little bit of history to do. This thing won an Emmy, so it did pretty well as far as the series goes.
It was a very moving scene because you saw throughout the episode the bond between Ichaya and Spock, that no matter how much Spock, it's kind of a little bit of a toxic relationship. No matter how many times Spock told him to leave, he's like, no, I'm going to follow you and try to help you because I'm that good of a friend. And finally, he realized that, he's in too much pain to continue. And it's like everybody that has a pet has to come across that decision and cross that Rubicon and do what's right for the pet rather than your own feelings. Like you could keep him alive, but he's going to be in pain. And I really appreciated that they were pretty explicit about like what his options were. It wasn't just like, well, he could be here, but they didn't like pussyfoot around it, for a lack of a better way to put it.
I found it really interesting that they were using a Vulcan neck pinch in a medicinal fashion, and I don't think I've ever seen that before, where it's like the treatment for this ailment, even if the ailment is dying, is a Vulcan neck pinch, because the big thing about the Vulcan neck pinch is that it doesn't kill people. But it just puts them to sleep.
I don't even know if it would really be about like the Vulcan neck pinch so much as a nerve pinch to kind of put it to sleep and make it just knocked out, so it doesn't
But it was a
have to
plot
feel the
point
pain.
that it was because they were talking about.
So they actually identify that one part as a Vulcan neck pinch. I'm sorry.
Because the whole point of him going back in the end is to teach himself how to do the Vulcan neck pinch. So, like, that's part of the issue.
Yeah, I guess I just didn't associate it like as being the same thing as a Vulcan neck pinch.
Also, like, I really enjoyed at the end where Spock says, "I'm going to go use this on the kids." So I don't think he's like doing it for medicinal purposes. At that point, it's more like I'm going to go beat up some children now that I have this in my arsenal. So I thought that was a very the way that he said that so matter of factly, like, I'm going to go kick their asses, basically.
Yeah, and I love that none of the adults like recognize what he's saying. They're just like, "Yep, you go have fun, son. Whatever you're doing. Yep, we're gonna sit here."
Well, that was what parents did in the 1970s. I had a permission slip to buy cigarettes at the corner store.
Man.
So, like, yeah, times were a little different with kids.
In the words of Bruce Springsteen, glory days, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Are you old enough to have smoked in school, Belle? Or has your school have a smoking section?
We had smoking areas. Like, if you wanted to smoke, there was a wall that you could go smoke at because it was within it, like it was a distance from the doors. Mm-hmm. And then there was like where the bad kids smoked, which was underneath the fire escape, which was in a different part of a high school that is now used for art studios. But yeah, no, the fact that students were smoking, I mean, I was a smoker back then. And, you know, the fact that kids were smoking, I got in trouble when I was in junior high school, but in high school, no one cared.
Yeah, it definitely had an area in the high schools that I attended.
Oh, wow, yeah. See, where I grew up, there wasn't. It had already been, I was like 4 or 5 years too young.
Yeah, I'm thankful we didn't have such areas in my school.
Probably.
Oh, God.
I think in the 70s, it was just in the bathroom. Like,
well, I think that's why they established the rooms or the places, is so that kids weren't going to be smoking like in the locker room or in the bathroom, that at least they had somewhere to go that wasn't in the building.
It's better to work with them than against them.
How did we get on this topic?
Yeah. All right, move us on.
Never mind.
No, it's great. That was a wonderful snapshot of your life, Dale. Thank you. I really like it when young Spock is running across the desert to get to the healer, and he comes across like one body plant as an obstacle. That was like the one little bit that I thought was like campy and hilarious.
It didn't really stop him. It looked like it was a bigger fight than it was, but they just cut it out for some reason. Like,
that's pretty much the story of TAS, though. Like, it's these seemingly big obstacles that turn out to be molehills. Like, literally in the Infinite Vulcan, which we almost talked about here also today, where it's like, oh, you got gigantic Spock, and really he turns out to just be a 2-second problem that wasn't a big deal at all.
I do want to talk about the healer guy for a moment, if that's
cool. Yeah.
So, as someone who is sometimes asked to perform healing rituals on others, I've studied the practice quite a bit, and both in the 70s and historically, healers have been women. There have been men healers, but the stereotype is that they're women. And part of that reason is because they can access emotional energy better, supposedly. I don't believe in all the gendered crap, but I'm letting you know what the history is. And so I thought it was really interesting for Vulcans to choose a male healer. I think it says a lot about Vulcan culture, especially when it comes to the Vulcan mysticism, is they want someone who can deliver that logic and deliver their healing in a very straightforward way, and not in, say, like the couple from Neverending Story with Billy Crystal and Carol Kane. Like, they were looking for something different. That was my rant. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I hadn't even thought about it in terms of gender perspective, but yeah, now that you're saying all this stuff, it does look like a good portion of Vulcan society has like an intense male presence to it, like very competitive, like in social identity and like I don't know if patriotism is the word, maybe nationalism on a certain level. It's very intense the way the children act, and they learn that
definitely there, and those words definitely apply to the Enterprise era Vulcans for sure.
Yeah.
To a lesser extent here.
I've heard it said by a friend of mine that Vulcans and Klingons are embodiments of two separate types of toxic masculinity. That Klingons are more like the honor obsessed, violence obsessed, conquest obsessed, and Vulcans themselves are just the type of toxic masculinity that's allegedly more intellectually superior, thinking that emotion is the antithesis of logic, that they can't work in concert, that they're in conflict. And so the idea that a patriarchal society, I do see Vulcans as patriarchal. Because like even in this episode itself, there's a lot of pressure from the dad on his son to be, you will not disappoint me kind of thing. That's an extremely patriarchal sentiment. So to think that like men are the gatekeepers of that level of knowledge makes some sense. But on things like, amok time, you see priestesses holding high status as well. So, maybe in the sort of like family unit place, the man, the healer, they're the folks with the status. And yeah, and I enjoyed the line where he said, I've heard humans do this thing called practical jokes. Assuming that, like, what kind of joke is that? My pet is dying? What is the joke exactly?
Yeah, right.
I also love young Spock's like logic turnaround. I am the son of Selleck. Like you have never. I am the son of Sarek. You have never heard I'm to be a liar, like or something like that. And it's like, no, I have not heard you are a liar. So that must mean you are not a liar. Like he just immediately takes that at face value.
Even though the prank he did, like he's like, I did that joke 2 years ago.
2 years
he lied once at one point.
I was playing pranks, not lies.
I wanted to bring up something about Vulcan society that comes across in this episode. Is that too heady for what we're trying to do?
No.
Okay.
We got 15 minutes to kill.
My phone went to sleep. Hold on.
Can I just wanted to make a quick statement here about Sarek. Fun fact, James Doohan, who plays Scotty, did almost every extra male voice in TAS. He actually recorded lines for Sarek, and then Mark Leonard, who plays Sarek for most of the run of Sarek, became available, and they got him after. So James Doohan recorded all these lines, and then they were recorded again. Anyway, go ahead.
I thought I was about to say James Doohan did an amazing impression.
Release the Doohan cut. Come on. Come on, we got all these Snyder bros. We can get the Doohan cut out, you know? It can't be that hard.
So here's my heady question. I'll read it the way I wrote it, and then you guys can tear it apart. So what I wrote was, Vulcans see the potential of weakness and helplessness in those who choose logic, so they must undergo tests of strength as a child. Is this more ritual habituation or an actual belief in Vulcan tradition?
That's
too smart for this.
For me.
Yeah, I'm too smart for this, but go on.
I would say that's probably like a major ritual that they have to go through, but it also is a thing to me where I don't understand like what the point of it is in their intellectual superiority of it. Like it seems like sometimes they value more scientific ideas in their presentations throughout the series than they do like rugged self-survival.
That's why it seemed weird to me. That's why I was
Yeah.
thinking maybe it was ritual habituation. Like, we just always did it this way. And
Yeah.
nobody knows how it started, but this is always what happens when you turn 7. It's why people baptize their child even if they're not Christian, or they make their kid go through confirmation even though they've never been to church. It's just in their family, that's just what you do when you're that age.
I got an idea. Like, maybe this is to keep the kids down so all the parents can have these big giant housing facilities throughout the planet.
Maybe it's scheduled during their ponfar.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think there is cultural value to having rites of passage. And the reason why is because I think Joseph Campbell, Here a Thousand Faces, mentions about like how it demarcates youth from what comes next. And so you can healthfully look backward, but at the same time not be stuck there and move on to the next chapter. I think that's really the point of it. I don't necessarily think it's meant to create a bifurcation between brute strength and logic so much as like, are you an adult yet type of thing.
My notes both had Joseph Campbell and rites of passage in it, so you're thinking along my lines.
I didn't read them, I swear.
Before we get too far away from it, how did y'all feel about the interaction Spock had with his mother?
It was so sweet.
It was, and I felt like there was a lot of chemistry just for like a little 70s animated program.
Yeah, I mean, Amanda's always been a great mom, and even though this time she's portrayed with the voice of Majel Barrett, rather than Jane Wyman, who played her originally, it's a very consistent run with Amanda all the way through every character, every actress that's ever played her.
I think her caricature is really good too for selling all of this.
I also think part of his interaction with Amanda was because he was told that Amanda died in the regular timeline too. And so now he's facing his mother, who he may or may not have already accepted as dead. And so he's going to have this moment like, I get to spend 5 more minutes with her because I don't know what's going to happen after this. But that's where my head's at right now, so who knows?
It's interesting how much small Spock speaks aloud about his feelings. Yeah. I'm confused. I'm afraid. They're very like emotionally open with each other, which is exactly the opposite of the kind of things that Spock values the most. And I think that those conversations were like maybe the only time that Spock has really been seen outside of his mother.
Yeah.
Plus, this is probably like a cool cousin thing for him, and he feels like he can relate to Selleck a lot better than he can his parents or any of his peers as well. And
he's a gunkle. He's totally a gunkle.
I like the interactions they have. Like, they are very warm and familiar in a way that's probably better than the show deserves sometimes. I also really like it when Spock saves him and young Spock is like, Mother says I should say thank you. Like, and he's like, the Lady Amanda is known for her graciousness. Yeah, that's what he says. And that was just a really warm moment. I think that adds on to the reason why this episode is so good. How did you all feel about the terse little conversation Spock and McCoy had at the end of the episode?
Yeah, I liked that it was just Bones being concerned for Spock, like legitimately. That was pretty cool. Without all the, you green ball, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I felt like we were on the verge of that here and there, but they were cutting it out for time. I do like that Spock has this like thing that he knows about, and he can kind of play. He can play a little bit as a joke on McCoy, and I think it's so good that the animated series was able to keep those dynamics within its frame. Yeah, I think Trek works pretty well as a 22-minute short.
Speaking of which, bring back short treks. Please. I love those.
So,
sure. You gotta sign up, though. They need your money.
The ritual that they were doing was called a Kazwan. And there's another reference to the Kazwan in that T'Pol is talking with Archer, and he's describing what it's like to camp. And she says, that sounds like my Kazwan. So, was T'Pol playing down the dangers in the Kazwan, or is Spock being overly emotional about the dangers of the Kazwan?
I think it could go either way, you know, to where she could be downplaying it because she doesn't view it as something to be upset about. You know, it's like children's things. That's something I did when I was a child becoming a person.
I'd go with T'Pol playing it down because she does a lot of like playing it down like, oh yeah, well, like that's not a big deal. That's just a thing we do.
I agree. I think T'Pol especially is the embodiment of that type of Vulcan mindset at that point in the timeline, because they're still like rigid about how emotionally superior they are and everything. And the thing about Spock is his language for emotion is a bit broader, and he might have, because of Amanda, more access to that fear. And maybe all Vulcan children feel that way, but they just don't express it because that's not their culture to do it. So
yeah, time enough for one more good question, Robbie, and then we are out. Pick a good one.
By the way, why is Kirk the only one who hung out and waited for Spock? Like, I thought that was a little strange that everybody got called back up. Of course, maybe that was just an animation necessity. We only got time to animate one character. Just put this frame down.
Kirk is waiting for his boyfriend to come back. I think that's pretty clear.
I can see it with a big sign that says Spock on it with like a bouquet of flowers like tucked under his arm so he can hold the sign. Would that not be adorable?
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
I wonder if everybody else just took a break, you know, for a minute since the captain's not around, just got off their feet, had some chips.
They had a disco party.
They had watermelon eating contest too, I bet. Speaking of which,
watermelon in the future?
I hope that continues being a lower deck staple, like they break it out once every season or something. That'd be so fantastic.
Do you think this episode would survive if it was done live action?
Oh.
Yes. Yeah, I think the premise is pretty good. But I don't think they do it as live action, though. The weird thing is, like, I think they could get away with killing a kid's pet as a pseudo-kid show, but if Trek tried to do it itself, it might be weird in live action. But I can see the premise being Trek. I don't know. That's a great question.
It's very Our Treksperts and Never Ending Story. You know, it's a little maudlin to try to. I think it's. I agree with you that it's the best TAS episode. I think honestly, I cried when Nighttide died. I don't know if like the transfer from animated to live action would necessarily flesh out more of the it would maybe flesh out more of the emotion that the animated version was limited in, with the budget and the silhouettes and everything. But I kind of like that you're left with your mind to fill in the blanks. And it's not a much work, you know.
I really think it might work in live action, but I don't think it would have worked for that era of live action. I don't think you'd be getting like a convincing Chaya. I don't think you'd be getting like, yeah, you wouldn't be getting like the same kind of cool giant estates that you see on Vulcan at all. It'd be a real downgrade compared to the way this little short functions.
Did anyone else here watch Land of the Lost when they were a kid?
Yep.
Or am I
I've seen
too
a few
old?
episodes.
So I can't remember what he's called, but that little, I'm sure he was a little person inside a suit that looked kind of like an alien teddy bear. That's what I think Chaya would look like in live action. Especially in the period. If they were doing it in the 70s, it would definitely be a little person in a costume.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I like the bigger Chaya. I want to be able to ride around on him, you know?
I could make my wheelchair into an Chaya.
And the thing is, like, it's so expressive, and I'm worried that like bringing something like Chaya to life would come across as like a little too frightening, like the tardigrade from Discovery or something.
Or like those Flintstones effects where the dinosaurs are all horrifying.
We've seen a Sailot too in Enterprise when T'Pol and Archer are in the desert going for the Kishara. They get attacked by Sailot. It's pretty big, pretty terrifying, pretty kitty cat like.
Yeah.
Kitty cat. So let's we're running out of time, so let's do a quick out of 10 for this for fun, and then we'll sign off. Start it, Robbie.
I'm gonna give it a good 9 out of 10 on a whole. I think the only part where it kind of breaks the magic of the story it's telling is when Spock is running back through the desert and you get the camp moment of him fighting the flower that lasts half a second. And it doesn't add anything to the story, but I think everything else works surprisingly well for TAS, and they play everything as sincere as you were probably going to get in a early 70s Saturday morning cartoon. I think it's a real vision of what the show had to offer under better circumstances. I don't think it's anything to feel embarrassed about. I definitely think it has an interesting message for kids in a lot of ways. It talks about societal strife and exclusion on top of the euthanasia thing. Yeah, it's fascinating. 9 out of 10.
Vanessa?
Oh, so I'm thinking about the same. Bullying, dealing with social isolation, dealing with losing the one creature that you have the closest emotional connection with. I think really well done. I think as far as TAS goes, it's the best one. So 9 out of 10, definitely.
Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, okay. So, if I look at it as a show in its time period, I would give it a 9 out of 10. My watching experience was difficult because I kept coming up with canon stuff that should be going on in that period, but had been fleshed out after the like, where's the temporal Cold War with Spock just going, I'm just going to time travel. Like, it was little things like that just kept popping me out of the magic. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Norman and I are right on par with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, versus other TAS, it is the best episode. It's a 10 out of 10 versus TAS. Versus the rest of Star Trek, yeah, like a 7.5. It's pretty good. It's probably the best backstory for Spock we've gotten up to that point. And I am also including Amok Time in that, which I don't think really did a great job of building up Spock as a character. did more for Magel's romantic feelings about Spock than did for Spock in that one. So yeah, this is, I think, the best backstory we got about Spock in the pre-TNG era. So yeah, good stuff. Anybody else have anything they want to just randomly say about the episode before we get out? All right. Well, thank you, everybody, especially Robbie for coming up with the topic, and all of my other co-hosts for being here today. And for the co-hosts that aren't with us today, Scott, I guess, had to run, and Eve, we're thinking about her right now.
Eve, I'm thinking about you.
We love you, Eve, and we are here for you when you are ready to come back. And thank all of you for tuning in, and we will see you next Sunday as we talk about the thaw at 2 p.m. Eastern here on Buffer Time. Until then, live long and